Hello and welcome back to the channel. In the previous video, we looked at inheritance, and in this video, we're going to be looking at polymorphism. The concept of polymorphism is programming in the general rather than programming in the specific. For example, if we wanted to create a program to simulate the movement of different types of animals, let's say we had a fish, a frog, and a bird, we would create a superclass called animal, which contains a method move, and each subclass will have their own implementation of the method move. So here, the method move inside the animal class refers to programming in the general sense. This means when we call the method move for each object, the compiler will know what the right thing to do is. In our example, for the fish, it would be swim, for the frog, it would be jump, and for the bird, it would be fly. Another concept we can look at is abstraction. We can have an abstract class or an abstract method. An abstract class serves as a blueprint for other classes. It can contain normal methods as well as abstract methods. An abstract method is simply a method with no body or no implementation. One thing to note here is that an abstract class cannot be instantiated on its own, which means we cannot directly create an object using an abstract class, and its main purpose is to be subclassed. A rule we have to follow is when inheriting from an abstract class, the subclass needs to implement all the abstract methods in the parent class. So if we have an abstract class animal with an abstract method move, then we would have to provide the implementation for the method move in each subclass. So to see this, we're going to create a new class, and we're going to call it animal. And we won't be running this class directly, so we won't take public static void main, and we're going to press on finish. Now this class is going to be abstract, and to declare a class abstract, we simply add the keyword abstract to the class declaration. As we previously said, we can have both normal methods and abstract methods in our abstract class. In our case, we're going to have an abstract method. So to define an abstract method, again, we're going to use the abstract keyword. Then we're going to have our method declaration, which is going to be public. Its return type is going to be void, and we're going to call it move. Now, as we said, abstract methods do not have any implementation, so we're simply going to end this statement. Next, we're going to define different classes that extend from this class. So we're going to have a class called bird, and it's going to extend from animal. As you can see, we have an error in our declaration. That is because we have to provide the implementation for the method move. So inside the bird class, we're going to have public void move, and we're going to have a print statement, which is simply going to print out fly. So now, once we've implemented the method move, our error disappears. Next, we're going to have a class called fish, which is also going to extend animal. And again, we need to implement the method move, so we're going to have public void move, and we're going to print out swim. Finally, we're going to have a class frog, which is also going to extend animal. Now, if we don't want to implement the method move in our subclass, what we can do is define the class itself as abstract. So if we change the frog class to abstract, then our error would disappear. But in our case, we want to have the implementation for the method move. So we're going to define public void move, and we're going to have our print statement, which is going to print out jump. Now we're going to save this file, and to run our program, we're going to create a new class. We're going to call it animal test. And since we're going to be running this program, we're going to tick public static void main, and we're going to press on finish. Now inside our method, we're going to create different objects. So we're going to have fish, and we're going to call it F. And we're going to call the move method. We're also going to have bird. We're going to call it B. And we're going to call the move method. And finally, we're going to have frog. We're going to call it FG. And we're going to call the move method. One point you need to remember here is that we cannot create objects using an abstract class. So if we try to create an object of type animal, and we called it A, then we would get an error that says cannot instantiate the type animal. So if we save our file and run our code, we get the different move methods displayed in the terminal. The final concept we're going to be looking at in this course is going to be interfaces. An interface is very similar to an abstract class, and their main difference is that abstract classes can contain normal methods, but when it comes to interfaces, they only contain abstract methods. Now, the advantage of using interfaces over classes in Java is that when using classes, we can only have a parent-child relationship, which means each subclass can only have one parent or superclass, but that is not the case when it comes to interfaces. A class can implement multiple interfaces, and instead of using the keyword extends, we use the keyword implements. Now to see this, we're going to create a new interface, and we're going to call it device, and we're going to press on finish. Now the difference in declaration between a class and an interface is that in the declaration we use the keyword interface instead of the keyword class. Now inside our interface, we're going to define different abstract methods. So we're going to have public void turn on. Again, we're not going to provide any implementation, so we're going to end our statement. We're also going to have public void turn off. And finally, we're going to have public void check status. Now you may have noticed that we did not use the keyword abstract when defining our methods. That is because since interfaces only have abstract methods, every method we add by default is going to be abstract. So we're going to save this interface, and we're going to create a new class called light. And since we won't be running this class directly, we won't take public static void main, and we're going to press on finish. Now this class is going to implement the device interface, and as we said, we're going to use the keyword implements, and we're going to give it device. Now as soon as we implement our interface, we get an error. That is because we need to define the implementation for the different abstract methods inside our interface. Before we do that, we're going to have an instance variable of type boolean, and it's going to be called isOn, and initially it's going to be false. Next, we're going to implement our abstract methods. First, we're going to have public void turn on, and this method is going to set our instance variable to true, and it's also going to have a print statement, and it's going to print out light turned on. Next, we're going to implement the turn off method. So we're going to have public void turn off. This method is going to set the isOn attribute to false, and it's also going to have a print statement, which is going to print out light turned off. Finally, we need to implement the check status method. So we're going to have public void check status. And inside our method, we're going to have an if condition. So if the isOn attribute is true, then we're going to print out light is currently on. And if that attribute is false, we're going to print out light is currently off. So that is it for the light class. So we're going to save this file. Next, we're going to create one more class, and we're going to call it fan. And we won't be running this class directly, so we won't take public static void main, and we're going to press on finish. Again, this class is going to implement the device interface, and we're going to have our instance variable of type boolean, and it's going to be called isOn, and we're going to set it to false initially. Then we're going to implement our abstract methods. So we're going to have public void turn on, which is going to set the isOn attribute to true, and it's going to print out fan is on. Next, we're going to implement the turn off method. So we're going to have public void turn off, which is going to set is on to false, and it's going to print out fan is off. And finally, we're going to implement the check status method. So we're going to have public void check status, and we're going to have our if condition, which is going to check if isOn is true. And if it is, we're going to have a print statement. And we're going to print out fan is currently on. And if isOn is false, we're going to print out fan is currently off. So that is it for the fan class. So we're going to save this file. Now to test out the different devices, we're going to create a new class. And we're going to call it device test. And since we're going to be running this class, we're going to tick public static void main. And we're going to press on finish. In our main method, we're going to define an array of type device. And we're going to call it devices. Now here is where we can see the usefulness of polymorphism. So we can have an array of type device, which is basically the parent class for the light and fan class. So what we can do is store devices of different types in the same array. So we can have different fans and different lights in the same array of type device. In our case, we're going to set it to new light and new fan. So this is basically a shorthand, and what it's doing is it's creating an object of type light, and it's storing it in the array, and it's also creating an object of type fan and storing it in the devices array. So from what we've seen previously, we could only store one type of object inside our arrays, but by using the concept of polymorphism, we can store different types in the same array. Next, we're going to define a for loop that is going to turn on all our devices. So we're going to have for. Our temporary variable is going to be of type device, and we're going to call it device. And we're going to loop through the devices array. And for each device, we're going to call the turn on method. Next, we're going to have another for loop, which is going to go through the devices array. And this time we're going to call the turn off method. And finally, we're going to have a third for loop, which is going to go through the devices array. And it's going to call the check status method. Now, if we save our file and run our code, we can see that the turn on method is called for both the devices. Then we have the turn off method. And finally, we have the check status method. So this is going to be the end of the object-oriented programming in Java playlist. If you have any questions, you can put them in the comments below. Thank you for watching this video, and don't forget to like the video and subscribe to our channel for more programming content.